So in this video we are going to look at President's rule. We know that the governor is the representative of the union in the states. The governor is empowered to send reports to the president about the functioning of the state. The constitution empowers the union over the state with certain special powers. If the state is not functioning in line with the constitution, then a president's rule can be imposed. The president's rule can be imposed under certain conditions only, and we will see what that is in a moment. So if the state is not working as the constitution mandates the states to, then the governor has the power to send the president a report about the functioning of the state. The president can look at the report and then he can decide whether or not this is correct, and then if he finds that it is true that the states are not running as the constitution intends them to, then he has the power to impose president's rule on the states. So the president's rule can be imposed under two conditions. The first one is under Article 356, which is failure of constitutional machinery. So if the governor is of the opinion that there is a failure of constitutional machinery, he can send such a report to the president. So if the president, on receipt of such a report from the governor or otherwise, is convinced that a situation has arisen in which the government of that particular state cannot be carried on in accordance with the provisions of the constitution, then he can impose the president's rule. So under Article 356, we look at the failure of constitutional machinery in the state. So if the governor is of the opinion that there is a failure of constitutional machinery in the state, he can send such a report to the president. And the president, on receipt of such report from the governor or even otherwise, if he is convinced that a situation has arisen in which the government of that particular state cannot function in accordance with the provisions of the constitution, then he can impose the president's rule. The second condition is given by Article 365. So the second condition is given by Article 365, where any state that has failed to comply with or give effect to any directions given by the executive of the union, then under the provisions of the constitution, it will be lawful for the president to hold that a situation has arisen in which the government of state cannot be carried on in accordance with the provisions of the constitution. So if the states fail to give effect to particular directions by the union government, then the president is well within his rights to say that this state is not functioning according to the provisions of the constitution, and hence a president's rule can be imposed on that particular state. So the states have to give effect to the union government's decisions, and if they don't, then they are in abrogation of the constitution. This is under Article 365. So if any state is not giving effect to the executive decisions or orders from the union government, then that state is not functioning in accordance with the constitution. Then president's rule can be imposed. We also look at the parliamentary approval for president's rule. The president's rule needs to be approved by the parliament within 2 months. So the president's rule, when approved by the parliament, lasts for 6 months. So let's say the president's rule has been imposed upon Karnataka because there is a failure of constitutional machinery, or that the Karnataka government has not given directions to certain executive orders that has been sent out by the union government. So if a president's rule is imposed on Karnataka, then such a president's rule must be approved by the parliament within 2 months. If the parliament approves it within 2 months, then the president's rule is valid for the entirety of 6 months. If the parliament does not give its approval, then the president's rule is scrapped. So a president's rule is first given approval by the parliament for 6 months. The president's rule can last for a maximum of 3 years, with parliamentary approval being accorded every 6 months. So every 6 months parliamentary approval should be given. Then president's rule can last to a maximum of 3 years. We saw that when we were studying about emergency, that in case of emergency there are infinite number of times that the parliament can give approval for extension of the emergency. However, in case of president's rule, it is only for maximum of 3 years, with parliamentary approval being accorded every 6 months. So only a simple majority in both the house is needed for a president's rule. We saw that when we were studying about emergency, we needed a special majority. However, in case of a president's rule, a simple majority in both the houses is sufficient. The president's rule can be revoked by the president at any time without any prior or subsequent parliamentary approval. So in case of an emergency, we saw that the parliament has to pass a simple resolution by a simple majority. However, in case of a president's rule, the president can unilaterally revoke the president's rule without any prior or subsequent parliamentary approval. So parliament approval does not come into question when you are revoking the president's rule. The 44th Amendment Act of 1978 amended how the president's rule is imposed after a year. After 1 year of president's rule being in force, 2 conditions must be satisfied to get an additional extension of 6 months. So there are 2 conditions. What are these conditions? The first one, national emergency has been declared in the entire country or in the whole part of any state. Second one, the election commission certifies that the general elections to the legislative assembly of the concerned state cannot be held in the present circumstances. So the next question that we'll look at is what happens once a president's rule is imposed on the state. We will look at this question in the next video. Thank you.